Welcome to Trending Now USA. I am Bella. Tonight's developing story centers on one of the most electric, unpredictable, and emotionally charged moments of this tennis season. What unfolded during Coco Gauff's latest match has quickly become the biggest conversation in sports worldwide. Spectators inside the stadium, millions of viewers at home, and analysts across networks continue replaying the footage, examining the details, and trying to make sense of everything that happened during those chaotic, high-tension minutes. What should have been a straightforward match turned into a whirlwind of confusion, energy, and raw emotion unlike anything fans expected to witness. And as we break down the events from start to finish, it becomes clear that this wasn't simply a match gone off the rails. It was a moment that genuinely shook the tennis world. From the opening serve, the energy inside the arena felt different. Fans could sense that Coco Gauff was entering the match with an intensity that went beyond her usual competitive fire. Her movement during warm-ups was sharper, her focus laser-tight, and her expressions suggested a deep determination to make a statement. But even with all of that, no one could have predicted the series of events that would unfold. As players lined up, the crowd roared louder than usual, a sound that echoed throughout the structure and added even more weight to the atmosphere. With cameras flashing and commentators taking their positions, everything felt set for a thrilling but controlled match. Instead, the match took a sudden turn into total unpredictability. The first few games progressed normally, though with a noticeable edge in the air. Coco opened aggressively, using powerful ground strokes and lightning-quick footwork to dominate early rallies. Her opponent responded with equal intensity, producing long exchanges that kept both players on the run and captivated the audience. But just as the momentum seemed to settle into a competitive rhythm, a disputed line call erupted into the first spark of chaos. Coco stopped mid-rally, convinced the ball had landed out. Her opponent continued playing. Spectators gasped as the chair umpire hesitated, unsure whether to call the point dead. Within seconds, players pleaded their cases, fans started shouting, and officials scrambled to review footage. The tension was immediate, the confusion intense, and the stadium atmosphere transformed from high-energy excitement to boiling frustration. When the review concluded and the point was awarded in a way that neither side fully supported, the crowd erupted in a mixture of applause, boos, and shouts, creating an environment thick with emotion. Coco, visibly frustrated, attempted to shake it off and return to her baseline, but the incident had clearly disrupted her rhythm. This was the beginning of what would unravel into one of the most chaotic sequences of her career. The very next serve resulted in another intense rally, this time ending in a slip from her opponent, causing a brief injury scare. Trainers rushed onto the court, fans leaned forward nervously, and broadcast reporters scrambled for updates. The match was paused yet again, and confusion spread as officials discussed whether the game could continue. Once play resumed, the tension didn't ease. In fact, it intensified even further. Coco started firing powerful winners, but also committing uncharacteristic errors, suggesting that the earlier incidents had seeped into her concentration. Her opponent, still recovering from the fall but determined to push forward, began playing with unpredictable tactics, mixing high-risk shots with unexpected drop volleys and defensive lobs that kept Coco constantly adjusting. All of this made the match feel more like a tightrope walk than a regular competition. Every point began to feel monumental, and every small conflict carried the potential to ignite something larger. Halfway through the second set, another twist deepened the chaos. A sudden malfunction in the electronic line tracking system caused the scoreboard to freeze mid-game. This forced yet another halt as tech officials rushed onto the court with laptops and diagnostic devices. The lights flickered slightly, screens glitched, and both players were instructed to return to their benches. The crowd grew restless. Some shouted impatiently. Others began chanting Coco's name, hoping to keep her spirits high. Meanwhile, commentators struggled to maintain clarity, unsure how long the disruption would last. In moments like this, it becomes obvious how much fans rely on precision technology and how quickly everything destabilizes when that technology fails. Once the system was restored and play resumed, the match felt as if it had been completely reset emotionally. Coco stepped back onto the court with renewed energy, but also with a noticeable urgency, almost as if she sensed that the match was slipping away from her control. The crowd fed off this urgency, cheering loudly with every aggressive forehand she delivered. Her momentum began to build again, but the strange atmosphere that had consumed the match only continued growing. Even routine points were met with an unusually loud reaction, as if the audience were desperate to regain some normalcy through sheer enthusiasm. Then came the moment that truly pushed the match into full-blown chaos. During an intense rally, a spectator in the upper stands fainted, causing a visible disturbance among nearby fans. Medical personnel rushed in, and players immediately stopped midpoint. For the third time, the match was suspended. Paramedics worked quickly, and although the individual eventually recovered, the incident added another layer of tension to an already emotionally charged environment. Coco sat quietly on her bench, concern evident on her face, while her opponent paced back and forth, attempting to stay warm and focused. Fans whispered anxiously. Security staff moved strategically throughout the aisles. And once again, the match seemed to hover in uncertainty. When officials finally gave the signal to resume, the mood in the stadium had changed dramatically. The crowd was quieter, more cautious, almost reluctant to cheer as loudly as before. Coco stood at the baseline, took a deep breath, and served. The rally that followed was remarkable, a sequence of blistering ground strokes, rapid adjustments, and tremendous athleticism that reminded everyone why these players had made it to this level. But even that incredible display couldn't fully restore normalcy. Every small event felt magnified, every miscommunication between officials and players felt amplified, and every unclear call risked reigniting the earlier uproar. As the match approached its final stretch, Coco found herself pushed into one dramatic moment after another. At one point, a fan's phone rang loudly during a crucial serve, disrupting her motion and forcing a replay. Minutes later, strong gusts of wind entered the court through an open panel near the roof, causing debris to scatter and prompting yet another brief cleanup stoppage. These minor incidents, though individually manageable, compounded into one long chain of disruptions that continually prevented the match from gaining any smooth momentum. Despite all of this, Coco fought fiercely. She delivered some of her most powerful forehands of the season, chased down near-impossible shots, and rallied the crowd whenever she could. But by this point, her frustration was visible, not anger directed at any person, just the fatigue of dealing with one unpredictable interruption after another. Her opponent experienced similar frustration, shaking her head repeatedly as delays piled up. The emotional roller coaster had clearly affected both athletes, and the quality of play fluctuated with each new twist in the match. As the final set arrived, the stadium atmosphere became surreal. Fans, commentators, and even camera operators seemed unsure of what to expect next. The match felt like it had stretched far beyond its typical structure, turning into a test of patience, stamina, and psychological resilience. Coco took an early lead, then lost it, then regained it again. Each game seemed to swing back and forth, each break of serve eliciting loud reactions from the crowd, which had regained some of its earlier boldness. But chaos struck again when a sudden downpour began outside the stadium. Although the roof was closed, the sound of rain hammered so loudly that communication between players and officials became difficult. The echo created an overwhelming auditory backdrop, making it hard for players to hear calls clearly. At one point, Coco paused, confused about whether a serve had been called out or if she simply couldn't hear the umpire. These moments added a psychological weight to the closing games, pushing players to rely almost entirely on instinct rather than auditory cues. Yet through all of that, Coco refused to quit. She delivered a series of powerful serves that brought the crowd to its feet. She pushed through exhaustion, miscommunication, and the mounting frustration of a match that refused to behave normally. Every athlete faces matches that test physical skill, but this one tested emotional endurance on a level most players never experience. Watching her fight through it became a symbol of her resilience, determination, and professionalism under pressure. The final game of the match reflected the entire chaotic journey. Coco started strong, winning the first 2 points with precision and aggression. Her opponent responded with an unexpected drop shot, then a deep return that forced an error. The score tied. Then came a rally so intense that fans stopped breathing, eyes locked on the ball as the players exchanged shot after shot. Coco had a chance to finish it right there, but mistimed a forehand. Groans echoed throughout the arena. Then, just as the next point began, another unusual moment unfolded. A small object, later confirmed to be a promotional flyer that had been carried by airflow from the upper decks, drifted onto the court mid-rally, forcing the umpire to halt play. The crowd erupted with disbelief. Never in recent memory had so many interruptions and strange occurrences invaded a single match. Coco laughed in disbelief, shaking her head and raising her hands as if asking the universe what more it intended to throw at her. After officials cleared the court, Coco reset once again. She bounced the ball slowly, took a deep breath, and served. The rally that followed was crisp, powerful, and decisive. With one final forehand winner, she closed the match. The crowd exploded, not just in celebration of the result, but in sheer relief that the wild, chaotic roller coaster had finally reached its end. Coco raised her arms but also looked exhausted, emotionally drained, and deeply reflective. She approached the net with grace, shaking hands with her opponent, engaging briefly with officials, and nodding to the audience. She didn't celebrate wildly. Instead, she smiled softly, the kind of smile that acknowledges both victory and the absurdity of everything that had happened. It was a moment that captured the humanity behind professional athletics, the understanding that not every match is clean, smooth, or predictable, and sometimes the greatest victories come from enduring the unexpected. As she left the court, fans lined the walkways, cheering her name and offering words of support. Cameras followed her closely, capturing every expression for broadcast. Commentators discussed the match with a tone that blended awe and disbelief. Social media exploded instantly, with hashtags spreading globally, clips racking up millions of views, and fans worldwide reacting to the chaos they had just witnessed. Analysts began breaking down each moment. Fans debated the controversial calls, and sports networks prepared extended segments to recap the entire ordeal. But despite all the noise, one thing became clear. Coco Gauff handled the chaos with a level of composure and professionalism that set her apart. While the match itself will be remembered for its unpredictability, Coco's response, her resilience, her ability to refocus, her commitment to pushing through no matter the interruption, became the true story of the night. As we continue following reactions from players, coaches, commentators, and fans worldwide, one sentiment echoes across every platform. The match was wild, chaotic, and unforgettable, but Coco Gauff's strength throughout it was nothing short of remarkable. And that is the full picture of the night's unforgettable chaos. I am Bella, and this is Trending Now USA.